Welcome to Talk About with John Twigg on Shaw. Thank you for tuning in. Our guest today is another interesting guest. It's Claire Trevena, the MLA. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks very much for having me, John.
How many times is this now? But you've been an MLA, it seems forever. How long is it?
It may seem like forever for some people. I've had the privilege of representing the North Island for just over 8 years now. I'm in my third term, so I've been elected 3 times. I was driving up to Saywood yesterday, and it was just, I was in awe again of the, as I mentioned, the privilege that I have the ability and the people have given their trust in me to represent them for so many times now.
Yeah, tough riding, but a great riding. It's so big, so diverse.
And I think that's what makes it great. Every community is different. Every community has its own needs, its own vision, and its own levels of respect. So I really have a great, as I say, great pride in representing people.
Yeah. Now you can tell from the accent that she's from the old country, as some say. Came to Canada as a BBC journalist. Tell us a bit about that, and was that a good background for politics?
I think that there is a close approximation, and many reporters may disagree with me on this, but being a reporter and being a politician in some ways are very similar, because you've got to be able to go and talk to people from whatever background about whatever issue, particularly as a rural MLA. You've got to be able to understand quickly, synthesize quickly what they're talking about and why things are important, and work out just what is important, and then be able to talk about it, to translate it. Obviously, as a politician, you're then looking at political angles, you're looking at policy development, you're looking at it much more broadly. But I think, journalism was a very good grounding for political life.
I think you were first in Ottawa, but there was a United Nations thing in there. Where does that come in?
I came to Canada 20 years ago now as BBC correspondent, and I worked both for the BBC in Toronto and then for the CBC for a while, and then I did some international work, and during that time worked for both the Department of Foreign Affairs and then for the UN, working overseas in post-conflict situations. And
BC's a long way from that. How did you get here?
Well, I was working internationally, and we were looking for a good place to be, and this seems like a very good place to be. My husband's originally from BC, and so that's what brought us back out here. We've been visiting many times, and that's what eventually brought us back out here.
Oh, that's great. Well, probably a lot of people know you live on Quadra Island. Probably fewer know that you're now the transportation critic, and that means you're responsible for criticizing BC ferries.
I'm responsible for criticising what the government has done to BC Ferries.
Yes, very good way to put it.
Because BC Ferries as an entity in itself is a creation of government.
Yes.
Whether it was when it was a Crown corporation, but now in this very strange private model we have, is directly a result of government decisions 10 years ago. And so what we're living with now, with the spiralling costs and the announcement of closure of certain services, again, is a direct decision of government. So this is what I'm posing, is looking at this as a highway system, as a transit system, but not as a private operation that is effectively, at the moment, just out to, feels like, gouge the public.
Well, you did frankly a great job down in Washington State just a few weeks ago, where you looked at their system and compared it with BC's system. And you put out a good report on it, big, long, well written like a journalist. But give us a gist of what you found and what you're recommending.
Well, I think that the first thing that I think anybody who goes to Washington State sees is the difference in cost. That it is so much cheaper to be using Washington State ferries than it is BC ferries. And that's even with a 95% fare increase in Washington State over the last 10 years. So their fares are going up, but they're still very affordable compared to ours. But the real thing I found was the belief and the commitment to Washington State ferries as being part of the infrastructure of the state and vital for the economy of the state. That you need to invest in the ferries because you're investing in the economy of the coastal communities. And that had been the tradition from when they were first became state-owned, which was Back in the early 50s, a Republican governor saw that they're important for the economy of the state, and they've kept that commitment to the ferries and look at it as part of the transportation system.
Was that before or after W.A.C. Bennett nationalized BC Ferries?
It was before. It was about 8 years before
okay.
W.A.C. Bennett did that. And W.A.C. Bennett, when he took over BC Ferries, it was then Blackball and CP, he did it for the economic interest, the economic well-being of BC. He wanted to open up the coast to economic development. He saw that there were coastal communities that would be valuable to be really linked into BC. So that's why BC Ferries, in its infancy, became basically part of the state, part of the province, to make sure they could be.
Well, I think the principle was to run the ferries more or less at break even because they enabled commerce for the rest of the economy, like the newspapers coming over from Vancouver every day and so many goods, all of our food.
Well, this is a very basic thing. I mean, they are our highways, they are our transit system, they are part of our infrastructure. And that, I think, is what has been missed over the last 10 years, that how vital they are. It's not just a quick trip. It's not just your trip to the mainland to go and see a Canucks game if you're lucky. It is part of our economic infrastructure. And I think this is one of the things that's so troubling about what the government is doing now in cutting service, is not just that they're cutting services, but they didn't do any economic analysis of the impact of the cuts of those services. They just basically went through the schedule and said, oh, those aren't used much.
Losing too much there on Bella Coola.
Yeah, so we'll write it off, rather than looking at, well, you're losing that much on Bella Coola, but look at all the millions of dollars that's being made on tourism right the way through the interior, thanks to that ferry route. They just ignored that.
There was on CKNW this morning, Bill Good had a tourist guy on from, I think it was Williams Lake maybe, but the Circle Tour that goes through Bella Coola, is that going to be dead now? Are
they want to cut the whole route. Just people are, this is what is so ridiculous about, these are supposed to be the government that are sound fiscal managers. They have decided to cut a route even though people are already booking their vacations for next year on the premise that there will be the ferry running and they'll be able to go through and do that route. So, what sort of economic management is this? What sort of foresight is it for the economy of the province?
Since we're here in Campbell River, what's going to happen to the Quadra Run?
Well, at the moment what they're suggesting is losing the last sailing of the night and then the last 2 sailings at a weekend. So instead of being able to leave Quadra at 10 o'clock at night, it would be leave at 9, and likewise the last ferry back to the island would be 9:30 at night. So that's what they're saying, and that was going to have a very big impact on a lot of people, both on the island and in town, because it's the back and forth. It's it's the people going to the theatre, going to the movies, the young people going to whether it's Sea Cadets or anything else.
It'll hurt the restaurants in Campbell River.
Oh, it's going to have a huge impact.
The Tide Mark.
It's going to have a huge impact, and then there's the business. There's the ambulance runs.
Welcan.
We have a lot of back and forth that hasn't been counted on. And the other thing that's very strange in their management of this and the way they're looking at it is that BC Ferries, in providing the statistics for cutting the runs, has just looked at the number of vehicles on the car deck on any ferry. Whereas, anybody who is riding those ferries back and forth to Quadra knows that the last ferries, there may not be many vehicles, but there sure are a lot of foot passengers.
Yeah, I go to Vancouver from time to time, and I get also the BC Ferries news releases. More recently, they've been sending out alerts, parking lots full. Like, if you're going to Nanaimo, you can't leave your car at the parking lot anymore because everybody now is parking and walking to save the ridiculous fares.
Yeah, because it's absolutely crazy how much it costs to get on the ferry, which is, and people who say, well, it's not really our highway. You just got to look at the Horseshoe Bay to Nanaimo run. Highway 1 finishes at Horseshoe Bay. Highway 1 starts again in Nanaimo.
Yeah.
If that's not a part of our highway system, what is?
And in the old days, we used to talk about the federal subsidy for the highway too, and I don't know.
There are federal dollars that go into BC Ferries, and we are where they're disappearing to. There is a disproportionate, a disproportionate amount of federal money goes into ferries on the east coast that goes into the west coast, but that is unfortunately the way that Canada is. More goes into the east and the west anyway.
We could talk for 28 minutes on ferries.
Oh yes.
I just want to get this last one in. I mentioned Walcan, the fish processing plant. I'm not clear on the facts there, but is the proposed cut going to hurt that business? They're a big fish processing employer.
They are. I think that the very fact that you're cutting back on service is going to have an impact right across the board. You lose the certainty of when vehicles are going, when people are going. So if they've got a busy late shifts, they need to get their crew over because a lot of people live in Canberra River. The trucks going through, again, it's oftentimes it is the last ferry at night.
This is fresh product, which priced for being fresh.
Yeah, so it's Walcan, it's Greek Seafoods are going to have an impact because they are the company that supplies Walcan with the fish. So it's going to have a big impact right across the board.
Well, good luck teaching common sense to them.
Well, it's teaching economics 101 to them, I'd have thought. Like you're going to make a change to something, look at the impact it's going to have, the economic impact, before you say you're going to do it.
Okay. Let's move to transportation. Now, you're the critic for transportation. You were children and families, I think, before?
I was, yes.
Yeah.
So
how did you feel
change.
about the shift? Did you ask for it?
I didn't ask for it. I was very pleased to be doing children and families. It's a heart-wrenching one. There are so many different issues, and
but
I
you
think
can make a lot of difference.
But I think that it's doing transportation. It's very, very interesting. There are many issues around the province, whether it's ferries, whether it is transit, whether it's highways, whatever it is. I mean, I run the gamut from the gravel road up in Burns Lake through to the new Massey Bridge or the Portman Bridge.
Yeah.
So there's a huge
the new
portfolio.
crossing where the tunnel is.
The Dees Tunnel, Massey Bridge, whatever is going to be there. The sudden announcement by 2017 we're going to have a new crossing there.
Yeah.
Again, it's a government playing politics with the finances of the province.
Actually,
really.
I have a conspiracy theory about that. If they take the tunnel out and put a big high bridge over, then they can get shipping underneath and do more port terminals.
Oh yeah, that's
in the South Arm.
They can dredge the river, and they will be you will see more container vessels going up. It is not a conspiracy theory. This is one of the things they've said. They will be able to dredge it. You'll be able to get more vessels up the Fraser.
Yeah.
So that is very clearly one of the things that they're thinking about.
Okay, the transportation minister, whose name Todd is
Mr. Stone,
Mr. Stone.
Minister Stone from Kamloops.
Has announced also, well, I'm calling it here Rural Road Safety Review, but before we went on air, you were saying that's part of a bigger transportation review. Bring us up to speed, please.
Well, what they're looking at is rural road safety. So it's a number of things. It is road speeds and how fast you can go. Like there are certain areas where you go from 90 to 80 to 90, and should we have a review of that? Should it all be one speed? It is looking at I was going to say interaction with animals, but the wildlife on the roads,
one-sided interaction.
How to make sure that wildlife and drivers are kept well apart from one another, and also it's looking at things like winter tires and things like that, just how to drive safely. They're looking for input from people across the province on this. It's a regular thing. They do it about every 10 years.
I was just going to say, why now?
I think. It was announced back in September that they were going to be doing this speed limit review. Then it was re-announced with a slightly broader focus last week for the rural roads, and I think it was re-announced because they also had last week the fact that we had the highest child poverty figures again. They were going to get 28% increase in hydro rates. So they wanted, and we'd had the ferry cuts.
The quarterly financial report too came out, in which they iced over a little bit.
Yeah, and they just wanted to throw people a little bit of a bone, I think. Was just like, let's give somebody something.
Yeah. So, pun intended, you're up to speed on the transportation portfolio.
Well, it's a very big portfolio. It does include, say, roads and highways across the province as well as infrastructure.
Yeah.
I don't have the responsibility for TransLink, which is the Lower Mainland. Although my colleague George Heyman, who is the responsible for that, he represents a Vancouver riding, he and I were looking at it when we were first assigned this, and he gets the Patello Bridge, I get the Portman Bridge, he gets the Golden Ears Bridge. So we do a bit of a divide from the way that the structure is.
Here's another issue we can do 28 minutes on. Do you want to guess? The hospital?
Oh.
Now, you've been doing great work on that, but I think it's another struggle to get common sense going. I saw this is kind of gossipy, but I'll ask you about it. Some concern that P3s that now operate hospitals like in Abbotsford are also going into offshore tax shelters. Have you heard that?
I haven't been dealing with that. I've been dealing very much on the specific local question of our hospital, how it's going to work, what is a P3 going to mean? Is it going to mean the building? Is it going to mean employment? Where are we with that? But
well, actually, where are we now? Is it a P3 yet, or when will
it's
we
going
know?
to be it's going to be a P3, absolutely. I mean, the government made it very clear a long while ago that they were pushing on a P3. They are going to be announcing in the beginning of January which of the proponents, which of the conglomerates, which bring together all the different aspects of the building, which will who will have won the bid. There are 3 different groups bidding on it, I believe.
Would you lobby for any one of them?
Absolutely not. No. My hope was that between any time now and the announcement of who is the winning proponent, is that we could have some common sense in bed numbers, and we could increase the number of beds there. Because I mean, we have doctors coming out and saying we are already over census to the new hospital level. We're going to have as soon as the doors open, it's going to be too full. And so I would hope that the health authority, before it issues the award or awards the bid, it says, okay, you're going to just have to build in extra beds here. Look at your figures, put in those extra beds, because we need them.
I've got Paul Redan from the Mirror, November 13th, headline, MLA doctors include more hospital beds now. So there's that issue. I also saw a letter to, I think, both papers about mental health beds that are not in the plan.
There is an issue of where the support will be for mental health, how much of it is going to be still left in the Comox Valley. That's where the centre will be. But we've got to make sure that we provide the emergency support and health beds there, particularly for young people who are in crisis, that we do have that. So we need to make sure that that's there. But I think that the very fact that we are going to face a hospital with acute care beds that will, when its doors open, we could already be facing hallway medicine is, I think it's really very sad, because we could do so much better for our community. We're looking not just for the building now, but for the building for the future. And by just saying we're going to stick with the 95 beds, we're not building to the future.
Now, when we started this Talk About series, the first guest was Mayor Jakeway, and I asked him about tearing down the old hospital, and he said he's not going to allow a building permit for the, well, actually, that's not the right word. There's a permit for demolition. Yeah. And, saving that old building, it's not that old, perhaps. Compared to other hospitals in the world, it's still in the top 5 percentile. Can we, or are you working to save the old building? Because there's a place, for example, where we could put the mental health beds.
There are lots of different ideas what we could do with the part of that old hospital. Not all of it. I mean, I think that people accept that part of it's got to be torn down. There is a core part of it that is comparatively new. We're talking about built in 95, 96, that you'd have thought, looking at creatively, you could find use for. I mean, we have, whether it is, I mean, I've had lots of different ideas, whether it's a place where families could stay, whether it's a place for mental health, whether it's a place for hospice, whether it's a place for, just various support, either beds or offices. There are so many different things you could be using with that, rather than just saying, well, we're going to tear the whole thing down because it's got to look this way. At the moment, the health authority is saying it's got to go. We're not going to invest in the refurbishment of it, but I look forward to seeing how that evolves, particularly with the mayor's position of not issuing a demolition permit.
Is the community giving enough support on preserving the pieces of the old building for extra space? Like, it's not really extra, we need it now?
I think that the community is in some... Yes, they are very supportive of it. They're very supportive of the hospital in all, and wanting to see that. But there is also sort of, I think, be honest, for some people, there's a weariness. We've been fighting hospital issues for 7, 8, 9, 10 years now, and just give us the hospital. There is that feeling, I think, from many people, just give us the hospital. But I think that we should ask the people who are providing that hospital, which is the Health Authority and the Ministry of Health, to, as it's building it for the future, looking at what we have and don't destroy it unnecessarily, and looking at the new building to be as encompassing as it possibly could be for the next 50 years.
Yeah. Now the legislature's not sitting. Do you
Nope.
want to run with that?
Well, 36 days in a year, I think that it says it all about what this government wants. It wants to, run without any accountability. I think it's disgraceful that they can, time after time after time, just say that it doesn't matter, that they will do what they want and not be held to account for it. I mean, we've had so many things that we could be arguing in the legislature talking about.
For example?
Well, the BC hydro increases, 28%. The ferry fare cuts. We've been talking about seniors advocate. We still haven't got a seniors advocate. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, are we going to have to close schools again, for the hydro increases? There are so many things that we should be discussing in the legislature that the government is just going to run by fiat and say, we don't need it. Yeah. Democracy is a very fragile thing. We are very lucky to have the democracy that we have here in BC and that we have in Canada, that we have the ability to go and vote in the people that we want to represent us.
Well,
but for a government to then say, that doesn't matter, what we say is the way it's going to be. It's scary. It's dangerous. It shifts very much to that, towards a dictatorship.
If the legislature was sitting too, you could have asked them about some of the improprieties, shall we say, in the last campaign.
We could have asked them a lot of things. I mean, there are just so many different things we could have been talking about that matter to both people here in the North Island, here in Campbell River, and across the province. The fact that they can just say, it's fine, we'll sit 36 days. And then when we do sit, we do these omnibus bills.
Yes.
We push it all through at the end. We mismanage our time just so we can get out of here. So we can go back and eat our barbecue in the summer.
Those omnibus bills are something I used to, for those that may not know, I was in the press gallery in Victoria for quite a while. And when they put together a bill with like 600 clauses, and the 5th and the 7th deal with an issue, and then the 9th deals with another issue. They're hiding stuff. And this government, well, I shouldn't say this because they've been in the legislature so little, but the Campbell government was notorious for that. And I'm concerned about this new one too.
Oh, this government does. I mean, when the Premier took over, we still had these federally they're omnibus bills, and here they're miscellaneous statutes. Yes. So you put everything miscellaneous in them. They push those through. They also use what's known as orders in council, which is government by cabinet rather than by the legislature. Yes. So you're taking it out of the place where there's scrutiny, and it's all done behind closed doors. They use that an awful lot. And so that means that things are happening that there is nobody providing oversight for. Yeah. And it's sort of one of these things, trust us, we're nice, we smile a lot, just trust us. I don't think we should.
It's not a coincidence that the Premier's off in China when the bad finances come out either.
Bad finances, hydro rate increases, everything else, it's just, she's got her photo ops happening. Yeah.
Okay. We could go for 58 minutes, but the future of the BC NDP. Now, the party has an interim leader. They just had a convention. The economy and the jobs issue is hanging fire. Well, we don't know the rules for a leadership yet. In that milieu, what are you seeing about the future of the BC NDP?
Well, we do have a leader. Adrian Dix is still the leader of the party, and he's the leader of the official opposition. I'm very pleased that he is, and that he's a good, strong leader. I think that he is going to be there until next September when there is a leadership race. In the meantime, we are working as an opposition and continue to work as an opposition. We will have, we hope, we don't know, it's up to the government, we hope we have our test in the spring and go back into the legislature in the spring, and we'll be showing the people of BC that we continue to be a good, strong opposition for them and for the province.
Now, some people watching would know you were part of the Baker's Dozen group that was dissident against then leader Carol James. But that seems to have been blown over a bit. How's the party now in terms of unity?
I think, that was some time ago. We're a very united party. This was, we've run through an election. We've unfortunately lost that election, but as I say, we are working in our critic areas and as a caucus to provide a very strong opposition in government, to government when we get back in the spring.
What does the new leader look like?
Well, Adrian Dix is still the leader.
No,
we
no,
have
no,
no
come on,
idea
Claire,
who we have no idea who's running yet.
Okay.
And it's an open question. The leadership race is in September, or the leadership vote is in September.
Yeah.
It gives people a lot of time to just decide whether they want to run. What it is that they want to bring to.
So
to
are you
the
looking for an
House.
environmentalist or a northerner or a woman or?
I'm looking to see who decides to run for leadership. I'm not going to make any judgment about it until that time. And when people start throwing their hat in the ring, I will look at who's doing what, who's saying what, and who I think will best lead us as a team, best lead us, and hopefully be the best premier come the next election in 2017.
Okay, we just got a few minutes. What are your plans for the next little while and for the next election?
Well, for the next while, I continue to work on the key issues for the constituency, whether it's healthcare, education, the whole issue of internet connectivity. We've got massive areas. I mean, there's a wait list for the internet in Port Hardy.
Huh.
In Port Alice, we've got people struggling to get onto the internet. It's crazy. Here in 2013, there's something like as basic as that. So working on these issues, obviously my critic file, lots of overlap with constituency work there with ferries and other things. So working, I'd say, giving good time to the constituency time, good time to my critic area, and working, getting ready to get back into the legislature in the spring.
And fighting off cougars in your garden.
Exactly, making sure that we get those the conservation officers back into the North Island, not just Black Creek.
Yeah. I guess I got the priority issues. I'm going to just take a bit of time. You do an MLA report, which is really good, and I think your journalism background helps that. But can the public get that?
Yes, anybody who wants it. It's actually, I send it to a mailing list, and it also goes to all the local papers. Some print it in their entirety, some use it as an option to get stories from it. So anybody who wants it can get it. They can find it on my website. So
which is?
ClaireTrevena.ca, www.clairetrevena.ca, and there's my MLA report. It's about when the legislature isn't in session, it's about every month to 6 weeks I get it out. When we're in session, you get it every week.
And it's a wonderful resource. Well, Claire, you got 30 seconds. Is there something that I didn't touch that you want to mention? We did pretty good.
I think you've covered an awful lot of things, but I just hope that people have the opportunity to take a breath in coming holiday season and just enjoy families and friends and just look at things through a nice relaxed way and get ready to go back in and have a very good new year.
Good. Okay, well, thank you very much, Claire, for coming in. Our guest has been Claire Trevena, MLA for North Island. My name is John Twigg, and I'd like to thank the volunteers and Shaw TV for putting this show on. Tell your friends, talk about on Shaw in Campbell River. Good night.